Benjamin Dixon is a fellow left-wing commentator, and he unearthed some damning Bloomberg audio where he talks about stop and frisk and says some very questionable things, to say the least. So this first clip that you're about to see was unearthed by, again, fellow left-wing commentator Ben Dixon. Great job and massive credit to him for finding this and releasing it. Hashtag Bloomberg is a racist was trending as a result of this. And he did such a great job that he forced it into the national conversation and he forced it to be covered by mainstream media. And listen, it's important because, guys, as I discussed on our last show, Bloomberg is buying the media, like literally, like he's buying, at worst, silence, at best, active defenses of his record. There's a reason why you don't see very much critical coverage of Bloomberg. Because when you spend $351 million on ads, as he's done to this point, guys, I don't know if you know this, he is like keeping in business countless local news stations. He's giving the national news outlets, cable news, massive checks. I mean, where do you think that money goes? That money goes to the networks. So they love that he's running. And so it's much more likely that they'll defend him, or at the very least, stay silent about him when there's a scandal. So Ben Dixon did such great work here that he basically forced them to cover this story by making it blow up so much on Twitter. So again, massive credit to him. This first clip you're about to see was unearthed by Ben Dixon. This second clip that you're about to see was one that we knew that this quote was out there, but I had never heard the audio of it. Now we have the audio of it as well. So these are two separate times he's talking about stop and frisk. Listen.
95% of your murders and murderers and murder victims fit one MO. You can just take the description, Xerox it, and pass it out to all the cops. They are male, minorities, 15 to 21. That's true in New York. It's true in virtually every city. And that's where the real crime is. You've got to get the guns out of the hands of the people that get killed. So you've got to, if you want to spend the money, put a lot of cops in the street, put those cops where the crime is, which means in minority neighborhoods. So it's one of the unintended consequences is people say, oh my God, you are arresting kids for marijuana, they're all minorities. Yes, that's true. Why? Because we put all the cops in the minority neighborhoods. Yes, that's true. Why do we do it? Because that's where all the crime is. And the way you get the guns out of the kids' hands is to throw them up against the wall and frisk them. And then they say, oh, I don't want that, I don't want to get caught, so they don't bring the gun. They still have a gun, but they leave it at home.
They just keep saying, oh, it's a disproportionate percentage of a particular ethnic group. That may be, but it's not a disproportionate percentage of those who witnesses and victims describe as committing the murder. In that case, incidentally, I think we disproportionately stop whites too much and minorities too little.
All right, so let me break down, why this is wrong. So to the first thing he said, just Xerox the description and pass it out because all the suspects of the crimes look the same. Okay, but does that mean that everybody who fits that description in New York City should be stopped and frisked? So, sorry, if you just happen to be a black male between this age and this age, you are by definition a suspect, and if you're caught walking down the street by a cop minding your own business, they're going to search you. And you could go to www.shutupandtakeit.com. That's the argument. The argument is, hey man, what do you want me to do? There's criminals, but if you Xerox the description and pass it out, the criminals fit that description, so what am I going to do? Apparently what you're going to do is crack down 99% on innocent people and take away their protection from unreasonable search and seizure, their constitutional rights. So make no mistake about it, guys. That's what he's effectively arguing for. Yeah. Forget constitutional rights. Forget protection from unreasonable search and seizure. They're black males between this age and this age. Come on. That's what we got to do. We got to search them. Who's committing the crimes, bro? Who's committing the crimes? That is a terrible argument to make. And that is a deeply bigoted argument. So everybody who's a black male between a certain age, they're by definition, more suspect and should be searched willy-nilly because some people who fit that description commit crimes. If you flip that argument, guys like Michael Bloomberg realize how ridiculous it is. Namely, the overwhelming majority of mass shooters are white people. It's white men, in a certain age group, whatever the age is. I don't know the exact numbers, but probably like late teens until 45 or whatever. Most mass shooters are white men that are in that range. So as a result of that, would it be okay to stop and frisk any white male who fits that description? No, right? I mean, that's obviously preposterous, right? Because you think, okay, even if that's true, even if it's true that white men, are more likely to be mass shooters, that doesn't mean that all white men are by definition suspect and you search them all. Because the country's what? I actually don't even know the percentage that are white men, but I know white men are the majority. Well, white women actually might be the majority, but white men are close to the majority in the U.S. There are more white men than almost any other, race, ethnic group, background, gender. I think white women, there are more white women than white men, but there are a lot of white men in this country. So people would understand, okay, that's a little ridiculous. You're getting all of them in that age group are guilty by definition, or you think you could just search them because some white men are mass shooters. It's crazy. But with black men, they don't care. Lump them all in. Who cares? Lump them in, cops, do what you got to do and move on. That's the mindset. And then you wonder why, people are looking at this guy like, you think you have the judgment and the character to be president? Get out of here, man. Okay, so then he says, this one really got under my skin. Well, yes, we arrest minority kids for marijuana, but that's because all the cops are in that area and because that's where the crime is. No, the problem is you don't consider other kinds of crime because it's your friends doing it. Namely, are you going to tell me there weren't countless crimes on Wall Street? Now, they're not violent crimes on Wall Street. Well, I don't know. You certainly can consider taking people's homes from them a violent crime, and that is definitely what happened on Wall Street. We know that's what happened on Wall Street. We know that predatory lenders sold, adjustable rate mortgages, ballooning rate mortgages, and then people lost their homes, and the people who sold them the mortgages knew that what they were doing was wrong. Fraud was a freaking business model, with Goldman Sachs. You have all these criminals. They're gangsters on Wall Street. They're robbing people. They're crashing the world economy in the process. But that doesn't count. That doesn't count because they're white guys and they wear suits and ties. So if you steal from people billions of dollars and you tank the global economy, you did it while being polite and civil and having proper decorum and wearing a suit and tie. So you're fundamentally different than somebody who robs a convenience store, let's say. So it's beyond ridiculous. You're telling me if you stopped and frisked people on Wall Street, you know what you'd find? A hell of a lot of cocaine. But you didn't search there because you don't want to search there. You want to know why? Because those people have a lot of money and power. They have a lot of money and power. So that's why you don't do it. So what you do is you go after poor minority communities. And you pretend, they're the only people doing bad stuff. And by the way, again, yes, we arrest more minority kids for marijuana because that's where the crime is. Okay, but why not only go after the violent crime? If you only went after the violent crime, nobody would be disagreeing with you. People would be like, yeah, I mean, that's reasonable. What do you want him to do? He was arresting murderers and robbers. What do you want him to do? That's what you do as cops. Duh. But that's not what he's talking about. He said, yes, we arrest for marijuana crimes. Well, that's the problem. Those things shouldn't be crimes. And what's happening on Wall Street is way worse. So, okay, that annoyed me. But now let me give you some more specifics on stop and frisk so you get a sense of just how wrong he was. And you see how vociferously he defended these policies. And how he did his fake apology because he wants to be president, but he doesn't mean it. He still believes every single goddamn word that he said. This is as recent as 2015. One of those clips was 2013, I think. The other one was 2015. So, stop and frisk was ruled unconstitutional. That's why it stopped. Is because judges were like, oh, you can't do that. Any plain-face reading of the Constitution, any plain-face reading, you realize, oh, the Fourth Amendment protects from cruel and unusual. Oh, I'm sorry. Eighth Amendment is cruel and unusual punishment. Fourth Amendment is unreasonable search and seizure. And judges say this obviously violates the Fourth Amendment. This is obviously an unreasonable search and seizure. You're suspect just because you're walking down the street and you happen to be a black male? No. How about a hard no on that? So that's why stop and frisk stopped. And now here's the fact that, you know, he now mentions and acknowledges, but he wouldn't acknowledge it at the time. Stop and frisk, as soon as it stopped, if these guys were right, crime would have went up. Because it helps stop crime when you stop and frisk, right? No. When they stopped doing stop and frisk, crime dropped. So that means you're harassing people and taking away their constitutional rights, and it's not even effective. It doesn't even help with reducing the crime rate. And also, there was an independent study of the city's stop and frisk program, and it found that 87% of the 685,724 stops in 2011 were of blacks and Latinos. Young black men between the ages of 14 and 24 were stopped 106% of the time, which means that there were more stops of young black men than the entire population of young black men. Now, here's the big fact that they can't get around. Out of 2.4 million stop and frisks, there was just a 3% conviction rate, so 97% failure rate, 3% conviction rate. 0.3% of the 2.4 million stops led to jail sentences of more than 30 days. 0.3%. And you ready for this? Just 0.1% led to convictions for violent crime. So to me, that's the only number that matters there. The only numbers, because we're all against violent crime. We all want to stop violent crime. This policy, which was nominally to stop crime, violent crime, 99.9% of the time it failed. So you take away people's constitutional rights, you waste resources, and 99.9% of the time you're just wrong and you're harassing the poor people who are getting stopped and frisked. I'm done with you. I don't need to know anything else. You're done. You're done. You're done. This is the kind of guy he is, man. He's also the kind of guy who decides on a whim, I'm going to ban large sodas because I don't like when people drink large sodas because obesity's bad, so I'm just going to ban the large sodas. Who does that? Of all the problems, that's the one that you're focused on? Not like, hey, do some people not have health care in the city? Hey, there's homeless people. Maybe we should address that in a more substantive way. No. I don't, big sodas are bad. I'm going to ban the big sodas. That's all I need to know about you, dog. You're an authoritarian goon. That's what you are. You're an authoritarian goon. The kind of authoritarian goon who does stuff like this while also vetoing a minimum wage increase in New York City, as he did as mayor, and spying on Muslims. And the list is endless. The clip came out of him the other day talking about how we need to raise taxes on the poor because they have bad habits. Piss off. You know what's a bad habit? Spending $351 million trying to buy a country, trying to buy the presidency. That's what's unacceptable. So finally, let's hope this guy gets some goddamn scrutiny, even though he bought the frickin' media. Let's hope he gets some goddamn scrutiny. And again, massive credit to Benjamin Dixon for forcing this into the national conversation.